Hello and welcome to Jurassic Mysteries, the special Patreon-only podcast where we take a look and discuss myths, misconceptions, and maybe even a little bit of unknown facts from the Jurassic franchise. I'm Brad.
I'm Dave.
And on this episode we'll be going back to 1993 and the tropical storm that hit Isla Nublar during the park incident, and Hurricane Iniki that hit Kauai during the filming of Jurassic Park. For this episode, and one thing I will be doing with these Patreon-only episodes is I'll be putting a copy of the run sheet in the RSS feed so you can actually go through. We'll be using Jurassicpedia's tropical storm entry they've got over there for most of the information we've got on that storm and what happened then, and all the links to what we're going to be talking about is going to be in this run sheet as well. So there's a couple of resources here I went to. There's an episode from 2009 of Storm Stories that has interviews with Sam Neill and Laura Dern. I was going to call it Alan Grant and Ellie Sattler. of just how what they experienced during the hurricane that hit Kauai.
Yeah, I see it.
But there's that, and there's also the Hurricane Iniki info on Jurassic Park wiki. But what's the issue here? Well, on this episode we're going to be dealing with the misconception. It comes firstly from the various names given to the severe storms around the world: typhoon, hurricane, cyclone, tropical depression, tropical storm, etc. The names change for a lot of different things around the world. Like Dave, you're saying during the pre-record that cyclone's sort of a southern hemisphere name for hurricane.
Version of the hurricane.
Yeah. Yeah, and secondly, we see a graphic during the Jurassic Park film that clearly shows a rotating storm mass approaching Isla Nublar, so it's sort of those two things combined is one main reason why a lot of people, fans and even not fans, think that it is a hurricane that hits Jurassic Park during the film and not just a tropical storm. But some of the facts, it's not the first time or last time we see in the films computer graphics contradicting something else in the films themselves. We've discussed in previous episodes of the Lost World Minute and Jurassic Minutes the island maps being changed between computer graphics and marketing and everything else. It happens. At the same time, we get to see that graphic. Robert Muldoon's on the phone receiving a report from the National Weather Service.
National Weather Service is tracking a tropical storm about 75 miles west of us. Aye. Why didn't I build in Orlando?
I'll keep an eye on it. Maybe it'll swing south like the last one.
So it seems the island has experienced storms like this before.
Should have built in Orlando. Then again, you'd have hurricane season be problematic.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, I think San Diego, it would, not to tangent too far, getting into this first episode, but I think if we know Spielberg has gone back to some of his other movies and done alterations along the way at times. If he was ever going to do any alteration in Jurassic Park, San Diego instead of Orlando in there would be a little ADR thing. I don't know if Hammond says San Diego at all in The Lost World, so I don't know if you could copy it from there and paste it in after his unfortunate death. But
no, I don't think he ever did.
Yeah. But anyway, back on topic. Like, in the tropics, I've lived in the tropics before, and when you get sort of storms and rain come through, it's windy and it's big fat old rain. It's heavy rain. You don't get a lot of the mistier stuff you do in sort of the where I live here now. But he also tells Hammond later that the storm hasn't dissipated or changed course, and needing to cut the tour short. After that, he continues listening to the report on the phone, and he mentions there's exchange winds at 45 knots. Now, doing a little bit of converting, that's only 51 miles an hour or 83 kilometres per hour. We had a storm come through last night, and I reckon the winds were higher than 83 kilometres an hour, and that wasn't a hurricane. It was a good lightning show, but I wouldn't even call it a severe storm either. Just a bit windy.
Mm-hmm.
One of the main reasons the storm's called a hurricane, as I said earlier, 1992, during the final days of production and filming for Jurassic Park on Kauai, Hurricane Iniki struck. I think a lot of people know the story, but Category 4 storm, and destroyed most of the island. Spielberg took the camera out with some crew and done some filming of the hurricane approach, and that's what we see in the film with the water, or the ocean crashing on the breakwaters at the dock and that. and like some of those scenes made into the final film.
Yeah, exactly.
But even though it was separate from the film, it did affect production. Some sets were destroyed, one including the maintenance shed exterior. There was a scene that was going to show Ray Arnold being chased to the shed by raptors, but it was cut for time because of the storm just hit before they finished filming, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that damage can be seen in the film. For instance, when Alan and the kids are climbing the fence, you can see the ferns and debris on the fence, and that was left there after the storm hit, and not so much set dressing.
Mm-hmm. Now, another thing that kind of has affected the entirety of the history of the franchise itself is that originally Kipu Ranch, where at the beginning of The Lost World, where we see the trailers and the two cars go through that valley, that was originally supposed to be the original Gallimimus Valley. It was Kauai originally, not the Koaloa Ranch on Oahu. And so, kind of, they were forced to move the Gallimimus scene to that valley. So, it's interesting that the second choice has kind of become the go-to choice now of the Jurassic Park movies, where they film almost exclusively in that valley now.
Well, it just goes to show with the tours, the Jurassic tours there and the Jurassic log, like all that stuff's there because of that hurricane hitting and needing to change locations from Kauai.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one of those little things. Something, well, not something small like that, but an incident like that has just changed the outlook of the films since. Even now in Jurassic World and Fallen Kingdom, like just the vehicles driving up Gallimimus Valley and seeing the monorail along that ridgeline, or along the bottom of that steep, the mountains that surround it. All that's now, again, just bringing back the nostalgia and memories of Gallimimus Valley. And that whole Gallimimus shot, them running in the field, and that was one of the final things they shot for the film.
Mm-hmm.
Post hurricane. I think it was only a day before Anna Richards' birthday too. They discussed that in that documentary as well. But just sort of looking at hurricanes in general as well, starting obviously with Category 1, where winds range from 75 to 95 miles an hour, so we're sort of not even at Category 1 class with the 45 mile an hour winds that Muldoon mentions. You're going to get some minor property loss, some injuries to people and animals if they're getting sort of out in the storm, mainly by flying debris. But in a Category 1 storm, protected glass windows generally remain intact. Some roof damage to frame homes may occur in apartments, but overall not really a lot of damage. You might get some power outages due to snap power poles and downed trees. But comparing that to what actually hit Kauai with that Category 4 Hurricane Iniki, winds ranging from 131 to 155 miles an hour, which is a lot faster than what we see in the film. Catastrophic damage, of course, severe structural damage, roofs off, that whole thing. I think even though one scene when Hammond arrives at the front of the visitor centre to get Grant and the kids and Laura and Ellie as they're escaping the the visitor centre to Tyrannosaur, like you can clearly see the roof still on the visitor centre. Like those thatched roofs, they're the first things that go in any strong winds.
No, the entire thing was, I believe, knocked down by Hurricane Iniki. All the exterior sets, including the visitor center, was completely obliterated away. In fact, I remember from the the Hurricane Iniki thing from the Weather Channel from 2009, the storm stories. They say that the roof was kind of like breathing, and Ariana Richards describes how the roof and the walls were kind of blowing in and out.
Yeah, well, that's the sets. The sets are one thing we've discussed here and talked previously about just how sets are constructed for the cheapest possible, just to do your shots on screen, and that's it. Like a lot of timber, plywood, that sort of stuff. So having them completely destroyed is one thing, but the fact that the crew and that held up in the basement of the motel they were staying in, although it's in sort of one of those areas where you might get a cyclone or hurricane, just the experience and just some of the stories they tell. Like there's one classic story that Laura Dern's told of her and Sam Neill on the beach as it's approaching, and Laura Dern asks Sam Neill if we're going to be alright, and Sam Neill replies, I think we're going to die. which I have a good laugh about now, but back then, like, you're on a small island, you're not, even someone with all the money, or not all the money, but someone like Steven Spielberg and Kathleen Kennedy they're not able to get flown out. They're there, they're stuck there.
Mm-hmm.
The airport's pretty much destroyed straight away.
In order to finish on budget, I think Kathleen Kennedy took all the footage herself back on one of the DC-10s that arrived with the storm help, the National Guard and all them. She flew the plane back to L.A. With all the film so that she could get it back into post-production on time.
Yeah, because, and again, you'd have to watch the story. I watched a little bit last night, but not the whole thing. But it was a good week or so before they were able to fly or get the rest of the crew and get back to filming. Because it's one of those stories, and what sort of happened after the hurricane moved on, where the production crews actually helped in a lot of the rebuilding, and like Kathleen Kennedy said, like they flew back with supplies, water and medical equipment and all that sort of stuff just to help the island out.
Yeah, well, they had all the set carpenters right there on the island, so that they were able to help out with the reconstruction and clearing the roads and all that stuff.
Yeah, so you got a ready-made workforce there. And I'm sure in the desperate times and all that, they done all that off their own back, helping out to the island that sort of they'd stayed at for however many weeks previous during filming. But yeah, so bringing it all together, both incidents happened real time and film time at the same time. But the storm that hit Isla Nublar is just that. It's a storm. Everything we see in the film points to just a tropical storm and not a hurricane, apart from that one computer graphic, which we can sort of not look at as intensely as maybe something like a map.
I think another thing that confuses audiences is that in The Lost World, Hammond says that Hurricane Clarissa wiped out their facilities, and I think a lot of people think that the tropical storm from Isla Nublar was the hurricane that hit Isla Sorna, which were two separate events.
Yeah, a lot of people forget the fact that he says after the incident in the park, and Hurricane Clarissa, which there's never mentioned about that in Jurassic Park at all, and it's one of those things. I'd have to have a look at the map where the two islands are to each other, because it's described as this one is west of Isla Nublar and heading towards them, and might go south. I'm pretty sure it'd have to be heading east if it was going to keep on going to Sorna, but
it'd have to head northwest, I think.
Yeah. Again, this is something we're probably going to research a little bit more before doing it, but we don't need to, because it's not the same storm.
Southwest. Sorry, southwest. It'd have to be going southwest to hit. Yeah. Because I'm trying to think of the opening when they say where it is.
Yeah, well, they say southwest.
Yeah.
But again, yeah. Yeah. But it's just, again, it's just one of those things where there's a bit of dialogue from both films, and fans are sort of, or people, viewers, are just putting two and two together without really thinking about it. And it's a shame, and sort of, let's go into another tangent quickly. One thing I found with Fallen Kingdom was just the damage to Main Street and the island. They sort of done it up to be just like The Lost World, with the damage we've seen to the worker village and that, but the worker village was damaged because of the storm. Well, because of the Hurricane Clarissa. Now, there's no reason to believe in the 3 or 4 years since Jurassic World was evacuated that there hasn't been storms, and you can clearly see parts of the Innovation Centre roof missing, and that's going to happen. But there's a lot of damage there for 3 years later. But we might discuss that when we get into our Fallen Kingdom review when we get there. So, yeah, that's Jurassic Mysteries Episode 1. David, anything else on that you want to discuss before we get out of here today?
Yeah, I think we're good.
Alright, just briefly, for all this and more info on the Jurassic Park franchise, head over to jurassic-pedia.com for all your Jurassic Park info and insights.